In this video, I'm going to show people how I secure a WordPress site, and let's just dive in. So here we go. All right, topic-wise, here's a I guess table of contents here, and I'm going to explain why this topic, and then I'm going to try to cover why people hack, and then go into CloudFlare DNS, talk about firewalls, and if it's even possible for you guys to set up a firewall. And then at the end, I'll cover some WordPress tips. Little about me. So I normally do WordCamp talks, and so I always do a little part about myself. And you guys probably don't care on YouTube. No big deal. I'm going to skip it. If you want to read that, read away. Here is a disclaimer. I'm not a network security engineer. I've been doing websites since '96, and I've learned everything by basically trial and error, whether it be, the first website I built, or networking where I used to do IT support type stuff. I've always been a geek. I've always learned computer stuff, but I am not an expert. And this video is not advice per se. If you're worried about security, you can hire a security guy, to go through a full blown scan and do all that stuff. That is not what I do. So this is take this as, here's some things you can do and it might work. So just a little disclaimer there. So why this topic? Well, I went to YouTube and I just looked and was watching a couple videos, and one of the videos was basically someone 5 minutes like, hey, to secure your website, you go and install WordFence and boom, you're done. And I just thought, what a bad thing to tell someone, because most of the people, if you're on YouTube and you're trying to get information on how to secure a site, and that's all you get is install a plugin, you're about 20 steps behind. You kind of like started at the end. Installing a plugin to me is the last step. There's a lot of things you could do before that can help secure your site, and that's why I'm doing this video, because I think people could learn what I do. So why do people hack? Well, they kind of don't. A lot of people are saying, why are people trying to log into your site and go trying to get into the site? And it's one of those things where it's probably not someone actually going to your site and typing in admin and then trying the password admin and then trying admin and then admin 123 and stuff like that. That's a very tedious process, and really what they're doing is they're writing a script that is like grabbing a list of domains and then a list of usernames, popular usernames, and then a list of passwords, and then you write a script to go through each combination of things, and a computer can process those things. If you write a little script to do that, you can process, go through 1,000 usernames and passwords in 60 seconds or so. And that's more so what's happening is someone writes a script and they just let it run, and it will go through and try to log in over and over again on different sites everywhere. And that's what's happening. It's rarely is it an actual person that has some kind of vendetta against the website and they're trying to hack in there. So it's not as personal as, 99% of it, it's not a personal thing. And why do they do it? Well, they're bored. Why not? It's one of those things where, I remember when I was 15, my brother and I, we rolled a house in the middle of the night. And it was, it was a blast, but real obnoxious, but you do it because you can. So anyway, that's that's why people hack, is just because you can claim that, look, I took this site down. It's kind of lame, kind of stupid, and really obnoxious, but that's just the world we live in. All right, so the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have a backup of your website. I once had about 80 sites hosted on some servers, and I had backups were running, and I at one point had to restore one of those backups, and I realized that all of the zip files that this program was using to create them were all corrupted. And so I basically did not have a valid and a good backup of any of the sites. I have since solved that problem, and I've tested things. So I'll just tell you guys, if you don't have a backup of your site, go to ManageWP. ManageWP has a free one backup every 30 days or every month, and it costs nothing. And if you wanted to do daily backups and get a daily backup that runs every night, it's only $1.40 to do that. So to me, that's a no-brainer. And if you don't want to go the ManageWP route, you can use a plugin called Duplicator to do a backup. The most important thing to do, though, is to test your backup. And if you guys want to, just in the comments, ask me, how do you do that? But I also have a YouTube video about how to go to ManageWP and set up a backup and how to set it up on local. So use that video. I'll try to link to that in the video. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure how to do that, but we'll figure it out. I'm learning the YouTubes. So, all right. Next step is CloudFlare. Using CloudFlare as your DNS. There are a lot of tools in CloudFlare that you get just out of the box, and I'm going to go through. Let me go find a site where I can actually log in here. Might have to pause this. All right, I wanted to find a domain on CloudFlare that I'm not actually using, so I can show you guys what it'll look like if you move your DNS over. So CloudFlare, a lot of people buy domains on GoDaddy or I don't know, Bluehost or something like that, and they'll keep their DNS on GoDaddy. And I'll just continue to use GoDaddy as my example. I have had within GoDaddy, I've had where DNS records have been completely wiped out. It's happened 5 times in probably since 2008, which is not a lot. But if your DNS records are wiped out, no one can get to your website, and no one can email you to tell you that your website is down. I'm not sure why GoDaddy has decided to completely wipe out records before, but because of that, I can't recommend keeping your DNS on GoDaddy. Not only that, you don't get any of these cool features that I'm about to walk you guys through. So let me show you how awesome CloudFlare is. So when you first set up your account in there, it's going to try to scan and go through all of the records. And if you do that, if you migrate to CloudFlare, feel free to reach out to me, but I might be able to point you in the right direction if you have questions or whatever. When you import the records, CloudFlare will try to find all the records, and what you want to do is you want to go to like GoDaddy and look at those records and the records that CloudFlare found and make sure that they match up and that everything is set up properly before you make that switch. Because if it's not set up properly, and let's say for some reason it doesn't find MX records, mail exchange records, and you make that switch, your email will go down. So you have to be real careful. Now, I've done Actually, I've probably done over 1,000 migrations to Cloudflare because of some of the stuff I've been involved in, where we build 48 websites for 48 nonprofits in 48 hours, and we've done it a lot of times. So I have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of migrations that I've done. So I'm real familiar with it, but it is a little daunting if you're not familiar with it. And so just be real careful if you do port over. But I'm just going to show. I'm not going through the porting process, but I'm showing you guys why I like Cloudflare. So when you put a domain in here, and I don't really have any DNS records. For some reason, I bought weirdcomputer.com. I don't know why I bought it. But anyway, when you set up a domain, it's going to go in here, and it's going to go through this quick guide. And I just hit Get Started, and I just hit Save, and Save, and Save, and Save. All right, so once that's done, basically we don't have any records in here, but that doesn't really matter too much. I just want to show you guys how I secure the website via Cloudflare. So first thing is I go over here to security and go over here to bots, and this is brilliant. And if you don't have this on your website, you really need it. Turn this on. This is called bot fight mode. You turn that on. And what it does is Cloudflare will keep track of unwanted bots. If you have an IP address that is on the internet and hammering all kinds of thousands of records and they're trying to get into stuff, Cloudflare will flag that IP address as a problem. And so when that IP address tries to access to your site and you have Cloudflare on the site, it'll do this JavaScript challenge and make sure it's not a bot, that it's an actual person, which is brilliant. And that cost Cloudflare the $0 amount is all I have. I have 180 some sites on Cloudflare, and I'm not paying for any of their features. So it's free, and you get all of this security without any cost. So no brainer. Another thing that I always do is I'll go into the WAF, or the web application firewall, and this is an actual firewall. If you see a WordPress plugin and it says it's a firewall, it's not. That's not. It might act like a firewall, meaning it blocks things. That's a software firewall that kind of runs on top of the web server, but that's not a true firewall. This is close to a real firewall here, and it gives us some great features. And one time I had a website that was on Bluehost, and they had gotten hacked, probably because they didn't update their plugins and all this stuff. And the first thing I did, they said the website's really slow, it's getting a ton of traffic, and it was just being bombarded. And I said, well, let's switch over to Cloudflare. And I just went over here, and I went to the overview page, and I went up here and said, I'm under attack mode. And I turned that on, and immediately, once the DNS had propagated and everything, unwanted traffic plummeted. It went downhill, and it's literally pushing a button. So you just turn that on, and then when someone goes to the site, they're challenged. They get a JavaScript challenge. So turning that on is great. And if you're not on Cloudflare, you don't have any protection, DNS protection. And this is, to me, just a no-brainer. And okay, I'm going to turn it off. And when I turn the I'm under attack off, I always set this to the high level. I've never had any issues changing it any other way. But I want to show you guys how I secure the actual login. So I'm going to go over here, go back to the WAF, and I'm going to create a rule. And be real careful here with this advice because you could lock yourself out. So, but I do most of the websites that I maintain. I do not have it where people are commenting. I do a lot of marketing sites where there's not a reason for anybody to log into the site except for someone like me. And so I'll set up some rules like securing WP login.php. And I'll do stuff like if the country does not equal United States, meaning if it's not me, where I am. Now, if I'm in the Netherlands or Israel, wherever I travel, I can go in here and change that so I give myself access to the site. But in this case, I'm going to do if the country doesn't equal the United States and the URL path contains wp-login.php, then block it. The safer way to do it is to do a JavaScript challenge. If you're 100% sure and you've tested the JavaScript challenge, then you can switch over to block. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to block, but I will tell you, be very careful here because you can lock yourself out in here, but I'm going to do the block. So basically, this is doing if someone isn't in the United States and they're trying to log in, just block it. Gives you a great way to secure your site. So we can hit deploy here. And so we have one rule here. That blue dot will disappear once the rule, there it went. So this rule is now in place where we get some security. And another thing that I will always do is I'll go in here to analytics and go to security. And this is not a real domain that I'm using, so we don't have any traffic, but CloudFlare will keep track of the threats and it'll list these countries here. And if you're getting a ton of traffic from, I don't know, Nepal or India or something like that, I'm not targeting those countries per se, but those are ones that I see a lot of unwanted traffic where things are blocked. You can go in here and say, let's just say Russia and India. You guys see a lot of unwanted traffic from there. You can go over here to security, and you don't necessarily have to block those countries, but you can do a rule that does something like this. So if on this list, JS, I don't know if I can put a comma in there, but so we can do something like if the country equals Russia, or the country equals India. And this is only if you see those countries listed on there, saying people are trying to, from those countries, are trying to get into your site. You can just go over here, and you probably don't want to block them immediately, but you can put a JavaScript challenge on there. So then you hit deploy the rule. And so now if anybody is outside of the, if those two countries, India, Russia, if someone from those countries try to go to your site, they get a JavaScript challenge. So at least it's going to stop bots. A real human will be able to get into it, but that's going to stop a lot of the traffic, like what I said before. So that's one of the reasons why I'm a big CloudFlare fan. And again, there's nothing to lose. The free plan is all I need. So, all right, an actual firewall is recommended. This doesn't apply to probably the majority of you guys because shared hosting is interesting. So shared hosting, which is if you're hosted on Bluehost, GoDaddy, HostGator, things like that, what they do is they spin up a server for you and they install something like cPanel. It's a control panel tool where they have it set up where if you're hosting WordPress, they have MySQL there for you. If you're a Ruby on Rails developer, they'll have Rails installed or Ruby installed. Or if they're, a Django web developer, which is Python based, they'll have Python on that server. Shared hosting normally also has email on that server and other things. And this is where shared hosting and managed server or dedicated are very different. So this is where I have to say I not a huge fan of shared hosting, because the way they set up those servers is, I'm a WordPress person and I'm only going to do WordPress sites. So a managed WordPress would be a better fit. But Bluehost and GoDaddy and all of those companies, they have to have it set up where they allow more things like that. And what that means is they have to open more ports, especially if you're doing email. But I think a web server should be a web server and never do email. So if you have a dedicated server, you want to set up a firewall. The only two ports you need are port 80 and 443, and I block everything else. In my humble opinion, web server shouldn't send email, and so you should use a WordPress plugin like Post SMTP, and I have a whole YouTube video about that you could watch. And use that plugin to send mail using something like Mailgun or SendGrid or things like that. All of the sites that the servers I have seen that have gotten hacked, all they're trying to do is to become a spam relay server. And so that's why I don't even have email installed on my servers. And so I can block port 25 and 110 and 993, whatever ports it is that runs on email. I always block those things. So that's kind of the difference, though, between shared hosting and dedicated server. Shared hosting normally can't block all those things because they have to keep it very open for any time. It has to be very agnostic, I guess. It can't be we only support WordPress, that's why shared hosting, my humble opinion, is not as good as something that's dedicated. So, but if you do have a dedicated server, block all those ports because you shouldn't need them. Again, be careful, because if you accidentally block different ports, you could lock yourself out of the server, but you should know that if you're in there. If you're a network engineer guy, you'll know that. But so you can do that. Like I have most of my servers on DigitalOcean, and DigitalOcean gives me a firewall rule that I can set up, and I set it up on all the servers. And then you can also do a firewall within the server itself using IP tables. If you're interested in any of this stuff, just reach out to me. I can point you guys in the right direction. But anyway, that is a firewall. And again, if you ever see a WordPress plugin that says it's a firewall, it's not. All of those ports are open, and you're not really at a firewall level. You're at a software firewall that doesn't really block it as early as it should. So actual firewall is recommended. All right, finally, WordPress. Okay, security plugins. There are a lot of security plugins, and I'm a fan of WordFence or iThemes security. If you're on shared hosting, you probably need those. To be completely honest, I've compared WordFence a site running WordFence and not running WordFence. And the site does get a little slower if you're doing a security plugin, because it has to process everything that's coming in. So be careful with WordFence or the like. Again, shared hosting needs those type of plugins. If you're dedicated and you've blocked everything else and you have it pretty managed, you might not need it. Again, I'm not going to recommend one or the other. You have to make that decision yourself. The next thing here is two-factor authentication. WordFence does have a way to do 2FA, but there's also a plugin called WordFence Login Security. Whoops. Let's. I can't copy and paste that. Let me open a new tab. WordFence Security Login plugin. So this is a plugin that I'll put on a lot of the sites, and with this plugin, and then here, let me show you the secondary plugin. So with, I think that's my next, so with two-factor authentication and then limit login attempts reloaded, you're doing a pretty good job. So what WordFence login security does is they've taken part of WordFence, that plugin, and just put the two-factor authentication part where it's its own little plugin. So what it does is when you log in, it asks for your username and your password, and then it takes you to Authenticator, which you guys are probably familiar with this. I mean, I'm always going into Authenticator here to get into sites, and so it'll ask for your username and password, and then it'll say what's the 6-digit code, and you have to have it on your phone. That's what two-factor authentication does, and that does leaps and bounds. Like, that's a great thing to do if you're trying to secure your site, because that two-factor authentication is really hard to get past. One of the things that's important, though, you have to have it on every user. If you only have it on one user and you have 10 other admins, that's a problem. The second plugin that I can recommend is this limit login attempts reloaded, and it does a really good job of keeping track of. A lot of times you'll go through the log of limit login attempts, and you'll see the admin username logged in over and over again, and then eventually they get locked out. And once you have that plugin activated, I normally go into the settings and I tell it after 3 failed logins, I think the default is it blocks you for an hour or something like that. I change that to about 96 hours, because if someone does, they get the password wrong 3 times, chances are I know who this person is. They're going to call my cell or send me an email saying, hey, I can't log into the site, and I'll go in and fix it. But I set it where it's pretty secure, because I think it's probably not strict enough by default, because I want people to, if they fail 3 times, they probably they have no reason to be on the site. So those are 2 plugins that I highly recommend. Fourth thing here, get an SSL certificate. And to be honest, I'm a big fan of Let's Encrypt. It's a free SSL certificate, and things like GoDaddy will sell you a SSL certificate, and there is absolutely no difference between a GoDaddy SSL certificate and a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate. The technology is exactly the same. They're using the same SSL software to generate that. The only thing that's different is that if you pay for your SSL certificate at GoDaddy, you're basically paying what, I don't even know how much an SSL certificate is, $70, $100, I don't know, but they are basically, you're paying for a insurance policy. So if your site does get hacked via the SSL certificate, which I've never seen in my life, there's insurance, so if I have some kind of e-commerce site and I'm raking in a couple million a year through that, and I need some kind of insurance policy for that SSL certificate, I could do that through GoDaddy. Now, you should also have, your business should have insurance to cover that type of stuff anyway. So I don't think a paid SSL cert is important. It's important that you have an SSL certificate. And the reason why is because if you're using SSL, you are encrypting the username and password, the information that's being sent to and from the server. It's at least encrypted information. The fifth thing here, audit users. A lot of times I'll log into a site and I'll see, who are all these admins? And they'll say, oh, well, that's the old guy that used to manage the site. And I'm like, and his account exists, why? So I always, if you're not 100% sure if you can delete these users that are administrators, just change them to subscribers instead of administrators. And if that person's trying to log in, they'll reach out, and they'll reach out and say, hey, I'm for some reason I'm no longer an admin. But auditing your users are really important, because I've seen websites that have been around for 15 years and you have just a log of users that used to maintain the site, and you've got to keep that clean. Another thing is auditing plugins and themes. If you have a plugin that is on the site but it's inactive, why is it there? You need to remove that. And that goes with themes also. With themes, I will have two themes on the site. I'll have one for the actual theme that I'm using. I'll keep a 2023 theme or a 2022 theme or something like that, so I can switch if I need to test things. I have another theme to switch over to. But all the other themes, get rid of them. And that goes too with plugins. If the PHP files that are contained in the plugin or theme, if they're there, they're a risk, because those plugins need to be up to date. And sometimes, especially if it's inactive, people won't update the plugin because I'm not using it. But that's where a security hole comes in. Out of date stuff or files that aren't maintained, they get hacked pretty quickly. And to be honest, I've seen most of the time when I see a hacked site, it's because they did not update plugins. So that's important. I'm going to drink some water. All right. Next one is avoid dumb plugins. I say dumb just in the aspect of plugins that, let me try to show you guys. So, like Ninja Forms. I'm not saying Ninja Forms is dumb. I just happen to click on that one. I'll tell you why Ninja Forms is not a dumb plugin. So, one, Ninja Forms, it's not at version 1. Which is good. It was updated recently. There's a lot of active installs. It works with the newest version of WordPress. It's tested up to 6.1.1, and it gets a lot of good ratings. Just kind of think of this when it comes to, I kind of compare plugins to shopping on Amazon. If it only has, only 3 people have reviewed this product and they give it 3 stars, I'm not going to want to buy that product. And that's the same thing with plugins. If you don't have a lot of active installs and it's under the number, and it kind of depends on which plugin, the more niche, or I think that's how you pronounce that word, the more niche the plugin is, the lower the number of active installs, it's gonna plummet. But you want to make sure that you have, other people are using this plugin. Make sure you have at least 1,000 people using this plugin, or it's going to be it might not, you might not have all the reviews and things like that. Just again, think of it as like if you're shopping on Amazon, would you buy this plugin? So those are some of the things you want to look at. So that's avoiding dumb plugins. Disable XML RPC. So what's XML RPC? Well, within WordPress, in the root of WordPress, there is a file called XML RPC, and I disable that on all of my servers. Actually, in the web server in Nginx, I go in and tell it to not process that file if it's there, because XML RPC, the only reason you would use XML RPC is if, at least I could be wrong about this, so don't quote me on this, but I'm 99% sure that I only need XML RPC if someone is using the WordPress mobile app on my phone to log into the website. That's how the mobile app authenticates off of the web server. And I have yet to have a single person that wants to have the WordPress mobile app installed on my phone, let alone use it. But disabling XML RPC is a good thing, because people will write scripts that will hit the XML RPC file and try usernames and passwords over and over and over and over and over again. So that is definitely worth disabling. You can actually, there's a plugin you can use called Disable XML RPC, or you could remove the XML RPC file. And when you update WordPress, it's not going to reinstall the XML RPC file. It's just gone. So that's one thing I normally do. Disabling comments. This isn't so much a security thing. It's just more obnoxious. If you're doing, I'm going to drink some more water. If you're doing a marketing site and you don't have a blog and you don't have comments and you don't want people to comment on your site, there is a great plugin called Disable Comments. Let's go find it. This right here. Great plugin. Again, it has 1 million active installs. It was updated 2 weeks ago. It works with the newest version of WordPress, et cetera, et cetera. So it's my humble opinion, it's a great plugin. One of the things that makes this even more important is that it allows you to turn off, you have a checkbox basically where you can tell it to disable comments on pages and or post, but I block it on everything. So you can block it where it blocks it on the XML RPC level and at the REST API. So if you have no desire to have anyone post comments on the site, this is a good plugin to have installed. Again, not really a security thing, just more of a let's keep the site clean and we don't have to worry about spam comments and having to configure a Kismet and things like that. Again, use Manage WP or something like that. I use Manage WP a lot of times because, one, I get that backup, which is awesome, but they also have a way where you can set it up where it scans your site for malware. So that's a good tool. I do pay for that, and I have that scanning on most of my sites out there. And then lastly, keep your plugins up to date. I mentioned it before. The number one problem is that people don't keep their plugins up to date and they get hacked because of it. And that's important. So there's a lot you could do to secure your site. One of the things, and I know I've kind of slammed shared hosting. If you're getting shared hosting and it's $3 a month, I mean, I get it. It's a lot of people don't want to spend the money, but it really boils down to how much is a secure site worth to you. If you're just blogging and you're not making money off of your site per se or directly, I understand that shared hosting is the way to go. It's cheap, it's easy, and things like that. It's not as secure as doing something dedicated. So, if you have a business and your business, if your website is your first introduction to this company, how much is that worth, that the site's fast, that it's secure, that it doesn't get hacked? If your site does get hacked, that's a big liability thing that can stain the name of a company for a while. So I just try to stay away from the shared hosting. And that's pretty much it. I hope that helps. Feel free to reach out to me, comment, ask questions. I'm around on Twitter, A Ryman, and I could greatly appreciate a like and subscribe. So please do so. Thank you very much.